That's
Time to just get better.
it's time to get better. I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I know what I did wrong. I'm
Yeah.
gonna reflect. I'm gonna heal. I'm gonna train and get back right at it.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Welcome to Donuts and Bikes, the mountain biking coaching podcast. Your hosts are Christian and Paul, and we're here to discuss the skills, techniques, and tactics we've used to progress our riders and coaches over the past 20 years to become more skillful and confident, and ultimately have more fun on bikes. So click into a harder gear and get ready to dig deep into some of these skills. Welcome back. Well, that's should start again. Paul, good to see you again.
How you doing, Christian? Good to see you, mate.
Yeah. We saw each other last week. It's exciting to be back into podcast world on the mics again.
Yeah, it's fun, man. You know, I love this podcast. Like I've been saying to a few friends, like how cool it is to sort of take something you've done for a long time and then try and do it through a different medium or a different process. Like I was running a level 4 course for PBIA last week, and part of that course is you have to write an article, and a technical how-to article, and it's kind of awkward for a lot of people because mountain bike coaches aren't always the sort of type of people that are writing in-depth documents, right? Every week. But they love it. I mean, it's one of the parts of the course that they really enjoy because it's forcing them to, as a coach, you know, apply their knowledge, but through a completely different medium. And that's how I feel about this podcast. It's great to be here. I'm lucky to have a good buddy like you to do this with. So thanks, man.
Yeah. Cheers. Right back at you. It's been a huge pleasure for me as well. And I love the creativity of just sitting with topics and thinking about them.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and I love coaching. I think we both agree with that. Coaching and obviously riding as well as eating donuts.
It's time to just get better.
It's time to get better. I made a mistake.
Yeah,
I know what I did wrong.
yeah.
I'm gonna reflect. I'm gonna heal. I'm gonna train and get back right at it. Going back through the kids episode that we did and really replaying a lot of that tape and thinking through some of the concepts really got me thinking more in depth about those concepts and as well as the episode that hasn't come out yet with adults, and really wanting to take a handful, really three ideas that we touched on in the kids episode and view those same concepts through coaching adults.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be a really cool thing to do here because I do feel like this connectedness, for instance, which we'll get into, like the concepts that we tied in with that, I think are what it's all about in terms of coaching and what it is that we're doing here. And I think there's obviously some more to say about it, but I wanted to approach that directly through the adult lens.
Yeah, I love it. And, you know, we've often joked about it in the past, like every time we edit or listen to one of our episodes, we're like, we could do a part 2 or we could do a part 3. So I think it's cool to dig into it a little bit more. And I like the way you said when you were listening to the tape, because anyone born in the, you know, after the 2000s probably doesn't know what that means. But
I like that. Yeah, I like that analogy though. The tape deck in your car.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's how you define adults versus kids these days. If they know what a cassette player is, chances are they're an adult.
They're probably going to come back. They're probably a retro. If there isn't already making tapes. I
don't know. They always got twisted, or something would happen with it, and then you'd have to get your pencil out and then rewind it, or, you know, when you'd pull it out the thing. I think vinyl is here to stay. I mean, that's some quality retro that's going to be around for another 200 years, I reckon. But anyway, biking, connectedness
and adulthood.
Adulthood
with this. So just to review, everybody just kind of start off with this idea of connectedness, we really focused on how when we work with kids, the coach is really trying to foster trust and comfort through connectedness, like the actions that they're doing through language, through their behaviors with the kids. And Paul, can you just elaborate just a little bit on that for our listeners, just to review like a couple nuggets on why this is important?
Yeah, I think the key thing with connectedness is being able to see the world through the eyes of the student. And if you're coming to the lesson from a place that's familiar or feels comfortable for the student, you're going to have more success with learning. Because ultimately, I think we talked about like every learning opportunity or learning environment requires a degree of vulnerability, because you're essentially admitting that you can't do something, you don't know something, you want to learn something, you can improve something. So that vulnerability, to get people to open up and be vulnerable, that's the place you almost need them to be comfortable in, so that we can understand what they're doing well, what they're struggling with, and then we can build up and develop the skills and the confidence and whatever else we're developing from there. So that connectedness is an essential piece to those ideas.
Awesome. Yeah. With that, we highlighted the aspect that a lot of what we're coaching with kids is not the actual act of mountain biking.
Yeah.
It's part of it, but we're respect, empathy, teamwork, being humble, which is a point that you made in that last episode that I think is critically important as a part of this.
Yeah.
And then it was want to highlight this next piece, and then we're going to kind of use the adult lens on these three points here, is that the coach is acting as a bridge between what the kid wants to know and then what they're actually going to do. Right. So
yeah.
we're guiding through what we might call a gap. Right. And there's a gap between those two things. And a lot of that with kids, what we do is we guide them cognitively through this, and then physical as well, the performance of a maneuver or climbing position or whatever it is. Right. But we're sort of a guide in that space. Okay. So those are kind of the first 3 points I wanted to look at from this lens of adulthood and working with adults. And coming back to this first point about this connectedness piece, we're trying to foster comfort and trust with the individual child, right? And the children that we're working with typically are seeing the world through kids' eyes and their own experience, right?
Yeah.
Which, if you're working with an 8-year-old, that's 8 years of experience. And they have, as we mentioned in the adult episode, this act of like building a city, building a town. They're actively in that process of establishing their mental patterns and all these kind of things. And when we get into working with adults, a 40-year-old has, exponentially more experience, and this impacts how they see the world, how they're viewing their own actions, and these kind of things. And the question I'd like to ask and put to us right here is like, what does this mean now for connectedness? Because they're viewing the world differently. They have a lot more experience. How do we then connect with adults as a coach?
Yeah, it's a cool question. I love this analogy of the city. Like sometimes I think and people have probably heard this before, but like kids are often a little bit more of a blank slate in that their personality, their city, their network of roads isn't quite as established yet. So we can mold it, we can shape it. We have an opportunity to do that a little bit more. Whereas with the adults, the city is the way it is, and it's kind of built. The network is established. Those neural pathways are established, and so I think one way of looking at it as a coach is, anytime you go to a city and you've never been there before, you kind of need a map. You need to understand where to go and how to get there. What's even there in the first place? What are some of the attractions? What are some of the highlights or lowlights of that city? You need to learn about that city before you can work with and travel through that city. And I kind of think of like adults in the same sense. It's like every adult has a very unique and different city, and getting to know that adult is a lot like just getting to know a city for the first time. And it takes time, and assuming one city is a certain way and so therefore another city might be a certain way is a big mistake. And that's why this connectedness is key with adults, is the city that we're entering, the personality that we're meeting, less of a blank slate. There could be a huge variety of differences there. And that is the inherent reason why we need to connect. We need to understand why they've built those roads, why their personality is a certain way, what excites them, what scares them, what gets them engaged, what disengages them, what they might be sensitive to, what they might not be sensitive to. You might say to someone, oh, your bike's looking a little bit old, we should try and upgrade it. Someone might look at that and think, oh, cool, that was helpful advice. Yeah, I never really thought about that. And then another person might get super offended because they just saved up their whole money to buy, I don't know, a new chain set that summer. And they've just spent all their money on a new chain set, but you still look at the bike and say, hey, it's kind of old, we need to upgrade it. And they've just spent all their wages that summer on the bike already. And now they feel really deflated. So, one little comment like that's just a good example of how, depending on the adult, the personality you're working with, depending on what city you're trying to navigate, it could go, in two completely different ways. So that, and a good coach is just like a good traveler. You can get into any city, anywhere in the world, and you can navigate through it pretty easily. You can find your way. And that's what a good coach can do. And that's where the people skills kick in. And to do that, we need to understand people better. We need better people skills. But yeah, it's probably a good place to start with that analogy, and just sort of building on that analogy and why we need to connect with adults.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that there's a lot of adaptability that has to happen for us as the coach, because that the adult has such a more complex map, to follow this analogy further. So we need to be able to be adapting and ready to roll as things change. And I think that leads into this next point here is when we teach kids, we're often teaching things beyond the actual skills of mountain biking. Does this happen with adults as well? Are there times when an adult comes to us with a goal, which is very common, like I want to learn to jump, I want to learn to wheelie longer or whatever? Are there things that are non-tangible skills then that we as coaches then can bring to that experiences that are helpful for the grown person?
Yeah, totally. Because I think, we see this quite a lot where like sometimes kids are better students because they're in school, right? Like they're in school or university. They're constantly in that mindset of a student. So sometimes they're used to being vulnerable. They're used to being frustrated and having to be patient. They're used to admitting that they can't do something. Like, not always, but generally kids can be better students. And then adults, like, they're not as used to being vulnerable. They're not as used to being opening up and being a student again. And so some outcomes of that are, sometimes we have to teach people to be a little bit more self-aware. You get a lot of adults that are jumping and, I don't need to learn to jump. And then you follow them and you're like, oh my God, that's the sketchiest thing I've ever seen. They've completely lost that self-awareness. Right. So sometimes you're teaching things like, we need to teach some body awareness so that you can understand what you're currently doing or not doing. And then as a rider, you're a lot easier to coach because you recognize that you're moving your body a certain way, and it's either creating a good outcome or it's creating a bad outcome. Like, a good example is like a number of adult riders that they don't realize it, but they're dropping their inside foot just slightly as they go through corners because their hips are shifting not towards the outside of the corner, they're just slightly shifting to the inside of the corner. And there's so many adult riders that go through corners and they don't even realize they're doing that. So without that body awareness, it's going to be harder to address and harder to fix. So I think that's a good one. And then some classics, like, I don't know if you've seen this, Christian, but like adults can be pretty hard on themselves. So teaching them to be patient, teaching them to be kind on themselves. Yeah, so for sure it crosses over. And it's funny, like I once heard a baseball coach like talking about parents, and the parents were frustrated that he was trying to mentor the kids on things like respect or teamwork, things that kind of had nothing to do with the act of like throwing or hitting a baseball, basically. And the parents were like, just, you're a baseball coach, just teach my kids baseball.
Right.
And he was like, if they can't like work as a team, then there's no point in them being able to hit a ball well. Or if they can't just respect each other and we're together all the time, then I can't get them to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. And as a baseball team, they suck. Like, it's fundamental to baseball that I teach them teamwork and respect. And we'll see that they'll be in a happier place as a team mentally, and then look at how they perform. So it all kind of goes down that same road with teaching biking. It's and teaching adults. Like, yeah, I think another good example is like I was teaching one of our ladies' nights a couple of seasons ago, and one particular group, we basically spent the whole evening just talking about being patient with the process and then being kind to yourself and stop comparing your performance to other people. And that was actually a theme for like 2 or 3 sessions. And we really talked about that. And we used mountain biking as an example, as a pathway to teach those things to that group of ladies. That one just sticks out in my mind because a couple of in that group are always like, I really want to do this. And I was like, why do you want to do that? Well, so-and-so's doing that. So-and-so's riding that trail and I want to do it. And I'm like, well, let's just check in with that for a second, because you have a goal just because you've seen someone else do it. But is that a pattern within your life? Is that how we operate outside of biking? Is that a healthy way to look at things? Because they can ride that trail. You want to ride that trail. Are you ready yet? Because if you're not ready, you're going to get really hurt if we just try and go ride that trail. So, let's try and make the goals relevant to us individually and are intrinsic to us, and not based on what other people are doing, so that we're not this sort of external influence that establishes that goal setting. So we talk quite a lot about, intrinsic goal setting, what's valuable to you based on what you need and not what other people are doing. And that was kind of a theme with the patience and being kind to yourself. So, yeah. Sorry, long-winded answer there, but
no, it's
like
good.
All this stuff, like someone asks me a question and then I'm like, you got ideas.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. As you're speaking, I really started thinking about that word value. And we mentioned that at the end of the kids episode, I think in a really special way. Folks that haven't listened to that episode, be sure to go check that one out. But when you think about the value that an adult is getting out of a lesson, I think it resonates with exactly the things that you're talking about. Like, how do you make sure that you're setting intrinsic goals and finding intrinsic motivation? And the thing that I see quite a bit is the being kind to yourself. Yeah. And with adults, especially learning to jump. And for somebody that's been biking, say 4 or 5, 6 years as an adult, has picked up mountain biking as an adult, jumping usually doesn't come very easily. It's not something that's an immediate accomplishment. Yeah. And a lot of adults can get frustrated with that process. And our job as a coach is to coach through the frustration.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily to coach to be better at jumping first. We've got to really figure out how to coach through that frustration. And one of the main tools is, the teaching and the role modeling. How can we be kind to ourselves in this process?
Yeah. Totally.
How can we focus on the process and enjoy the process and find that moment to moment joy of doing something difficult?
Yeah. And totally. It's like shifting their mind to the process goals more so than maybe the outcome goal.
Yeah. And then, like, again, back to value. Like, I think that most adults are coming into a lesson seeking some sort of value that they may be not able to articulate.
Yeah.
They want to jump, but they also want to get something of value out of it because they have all these other, their map is built out. They know the totality of their town, their village, whatever, and we're giving them some value to plug in there.
Totally. And that kind of reminds me of like, the extrinsic goals with adult coaching. They often come through like the culture of the sport. So like the culture of biking is typically terrain-based goals. Like, I want to learn how to ride black trails instead of blue trails, or drops, or bigger drops, or I want to get onto jumps, or there's this techie trail that my friends are riding and I haven't ridden yet. Like, typically adults will come in with these kind of terrain-based goals, which are really outcome-based, like we just mentioned. So part of the coaching I find with adults a lot of the time is trying to teach them how to learn. And part of learning how to learn is understanding the difference between what are the steps through the process that we need to learn that will eventually one day lead to the outcome. So trying to get adults to appreciate the process, the skills we develop along the way to eventually learning how to jump are just as important, if not more important, and actually more pleasing. Like, the nice thing with a process goal is you can walk away with success on every lesson, regardless of whether you've achieved the outcome or not. So it's process goals are a great tool to get adults to learn how to learn a little bit better and learn how to be kind to themselves. So, if they haven't ridden that trail yet, well, it doesn't matter. I improved my braking today. So at least I'm getting better at my braking. And then eventually I'll build up to that steeper rock roll trail. Or whatever it might be. But
I love this idea of teaching how to learn as an outcome here, or as a process more correctly. Very cool. Let's get into this next point here, called the gap, right? And this is the gap between what we think we want to do and the doing of it. For kids, we're coaching them through that process. And kids, as we'll talk about in the final point today, is have a beginner mindset, right? They're open to being guided through that. And I think as adults, as we grow into adulthood, we start to know a lot of things. Our cities get very complex very quickly, and we know all the shortcuts.
Yeah.
And we get very comfortable. We can get very comfortable with our performance. And then the analogy that it's been sitting with me with this is that in that space of the gap, we fill that gap up with things. And that then blocks us from actually engaging fully into the process, and can make for coaching somebody very difficult. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's common because, again, like with the adults, they'll the common phrase is like, oh, I'm too old to learn that now, right? They've just taken themselves out of the equation. If they haven't taken themselves out of the equation, it's they're at least not helping it, right? With that that mindset. Or it could be something as simple as maybe they're not going that far and saying, oh, I'm too old to learn that now. Or it's just like they've got into a habit of not learning. So they've plateaued.
Right.
And it's harder to suddenly change. Like if you ride a certain way for 10, 15, 20 years and you ride exact same way and you just repeat that muscle memory, it's like the concrete, it's set. It's so hard to break it up, whereas someone that's constantly learning, like they're constantly stirring the concrete and it doesn't allow it to set, right? So then you can mold it however you want. So I feel like, we often talk about that with adults, like you've got to kind of crack the mold. I always think of like, I don't know why, but I think of like those plastic He-Man toys when we were kids in the 80s. It's kind of rigid plastic kind of action figures. And you need to put them in the microwave or the oven and warm them up. And then they all kind of get gooey. And not that I did that when I was a kid, but highly don't recommend that. Your mum or dad might not like that. But, I always think of that kind of cracking the mold and getting it from plastic back to rubber, both mentally and physically and technically. Like you can apply that analogy to those three components of their performance, like the mental side, the technical side, the physical side. Like all of those things can get stuck and set, but we need to do something to break that mold so that we can bend it and reshape it however we need. And the longer you go without challenging yourself, without reflecting and being introspective, the longer you leave for that concrete to set, and then the harder it is to kind of crack that mold. So I don't know if that kind of answers the question.
No, I think that makes a good point there. I've always loved that analogy of you used to say breaking the intermediate mold, right? We get to a point in our writing where we're very competent at doing what we do.
Yeah. Totally.
But we're set in our ways, and it takes some cracking of that mold to get into new patterns.
I mean, I think partly one of the pieces that's missing there is inspiration and motivation. Like you look at kids that they're quite easily inspired or motivated to learn something more, like whether they're watching videos or that kid 2 years older than them can do sick whips or whatever, or that kid on the cross country team is way faster at the climb. Like they're constantly in an environment where they're being inspired to progress, to keep moving forward. And so the motivation is kind of intrinsically there all the time. Whereas with adults, like they less often do that. They're not constantly looking at videos and seeing themselves in what they see. Whereas kids are quite good at that. They'll see a rider doing something way above their skill level, and they'll be like, I want to do that, I want to learn that. And I think that's a key piece for adults is sometimes or often that's kind of lacking. Like they'll watch Rampage, they'll watch a biking video, but they won't automatically go to the mindset of, I want to try that, or maybe not that big, but I want to do something similar to that on a smaller scale. Like I'm not going to do a massive whip like that, but I'd love to learn some basic whips, some little whips. Adults don't go through that, so they don't inherently have that motivation to change their riding and to keep learning, to keep progressing. They get very comfortable with the comfortable. They get very comfortable with, I can ride my bike now, I'm not crashing too much, I'm happy with that, I'm good with that. So they definitely sit in more of this sustained mindset a lot more than kids, where they're kind of automatically, naturally. Kids are always in that growth mindset. So that's
that the word inspiration there, I think, is a really one to focus in on for a second. I think one of the differences that I'm hearing you say is that the kids can get inspired very easily. And I would add, in my experience, that kids inspire each other, and you see groups of kids riding together, whereas in trying tricks, we see it all the time here at our bike park. There'll be a group of eighth graders, they're trying to figure out how to whip, and there's 5 of them, and somebody's got a camera out, and they're all like super stoked, but they're trying to figure it out, and they're pushing each other. And how often do we see a group of adults doing that?
Yeah, totally. Well, they've kind of forgotten how to play. I mean, that's just kids playing, really.
Right.
And adults don't play like that. Like they don't take a bike and play with the bike. They just go on a ride. Whereas the best adult bikers I see are the ones that basically haven't grown up. They still have that childish mindset. Like they'll watch a video or they'll watch their friend and be like, that's sick, I'm going to try and do that. Like in that sense, the adult hasn't grown up. They're still fully in that kind of growth mindset without realizing they're in a growth mindset. They're just constantly playing and, oh, wow, like the way Ross did that was sick. Like, I wonder if I can do that.
But Ross is very inspirational.
Yeah.
We need to have him on the podcast.
Yeah, for sure, man. He's very kind of adult and grumpy about it. He's very understated, partly because he's Scottish, but
Scottish.
But to pick on Russ for a minute, like partly what makes him such a good rider as an adult and the fact that he's constantly learning is because he's constantly watching stuff like video, motocross, snowboarding, like F1, whatever it is. Like he's constantly inspiring himself to learn something. And in that sense, he hasn't grown up, and I love that.
We'll have him to come on and defend himself. At some point. Yeah. But you've made a great point here, and I want to share just a little story. But I think that there are messages within our culture and within our society for adults to stop playing.
Yeah,
like there's a time to put away the toys. I had a pretty significant crash on my dirt jumper a decade ago in a concrete skate park. Ugh. And I was in a sling for a long time and separated my shoulder. But one of the grown-ups the first grown-up that saw me looked at me. It was like, it's time to grow up. Those were his words to me. I'll never forget. He's like, Christian, it's time to grow up. And I'm like,
that sucks.
Fuck no, it's not. It's not. I'm going to be back at it. But I think that's
time to just get better.
It's time to get better. I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I know what I did wrong. Yeah. I'm gonna reflect. I'm gonna heal. I'm gonna train and get back right at it.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you want to learn more about us, please check out our first info episode, which digs into who we are, what we do, and our background in the coaching and mountain bike industry. You can also check us out on Instagram at Donuts and Bikes, or our podcast website is the Mountain Bike Coaching Podcast.buzzsprout.com. All right, back to the show.
But I think that to zoom back over into the coaching and how do we coach within this framework, and be playful. Like let's teach playfulness. How can we go have an absolute blast on this trail? And I know following you enough, just little playful jibs here and there, and finding opportunities just to be expressive on the bike, translate then to inspiration. Paul's doing that. I want to try to do that. Ross is doing that. I want to try to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that there are, actually just reminding adults that it's okay to play.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge. And that's partly just goes back to that vulnerability, is they're a little bit shy or reserved to just be a bit silly or to fail at something, especially in front of their peers or their friends. That's the one thing that we, and if I go into the session as a coach and I'm too serious and I'm too rigid, without realizing it, I'm just building that atmosphere in my coaching sessions. I'm building that culture. Like when I'm coaching adults, often I feel like I'm just coaching kids. I'm pretty much the same. I'm acting the same way. I'm a little bit goofy, playing jokes, hanging around, because I'm trying to build an atmosphere where we're just having fun and everyone's comfortable, everyone's relaxed. And then we're kind of automatically setting up an environment where the adult can kind of just let go a little bit and just chill out, relax a little bit, and stop being so sort of conservative and just tell a joke, be silly, laugh at yourself. try something, fall over, and keep going. Have fun.
Well, it's like the end of the Lego movie. Will Ferrell's character, Lord Business, it's like stop messing with my stuff. These are not toys. These are highly sophisticated interlocking brick systems.
Yeah.
The kid's like, but we got it at a toy store.
That's such a good movie.
We watched it a couple weekends ago. It was awesome.
But that kind of reminds me, like, because I see this in coaches too. Like, anytime you see an adult plateau, whether it's in their coaching or their writing, you kind of just look at their lifestyle. And, I love movies. Most people that know me knows that I love movies, and I think that helps me. I still watch a lot of kids movies because I have kids myself, but it's not just the biking. It's like I'm being a goofball in other areas of my life. I'm watching silly movies, or I'm trying different sports, or I'm bouncing up and down on the kids' trampoline, or if Huxley's like running through town, and I don't know if he's like running along the edge of a wall, assuming it's safe-ish. Like, I'm usually up there with him. Like, I'm that kind of, like, within reason. I don't want to look like a complete muppet in the middle of Vancouver, but it's like, it's a pattern, right? And I feel like if you have that pattern in your everyday life with just being a bit relaxed, not taking yourself too seriously, being a bit of a goofball, being unafraid to fail at something, trying to always find ways to be inspired and to learn something new. Like, partly why I think you and I both play music is it's like I'm constantly trying to do something and learn something new. So and then when it comes to me being on the bike, I'm not really acting differently. I'm not behaving differently. I'm just kind of behaving the same way that I would in other areas of my life.
Yeah, exactly. Play more. Play more. Let's shift gears into kind of this next topic here of language and performance. We talked extensively about this with kids and focused on how we say things, how much that matters. And if listeners are paying attention, I don't know, Paul, if you caught this, but you and I both said things that were they contradicted each other at different parts in the podcast, because we said two different things, but I wanted to highlight how cool this idea is, and it's really based around how we say things matters, right? And so you were talking about with kids, sometimes it's really important to talk to them like adults. Yeah. Right. And so they need that. And at some point later in the show, I said, sometimes we need to talk to them like camp counselors, and we need to be playful. And I think what that really speaks to is the adaptability, of how do we adjust our language to meet the moment so that the resulting performance or whatever it is we're trying to achieve is optimized. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so, sure.
So with adults, what are some things we can do to kind of be adaptable with our language that might be different from with kids?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think we can touch on a few simple examples and tactics to go through with our language with adults. But I think one thing that really helps is in your own life, getting to know as many different type of people as you can. Traveling really helps. Different types of jobs really helps. The coaches I see that connect really well with other adults, they've had a diverse, colorful, really interesting background. They've worked as a cleaner, as a chef, as a artist. I don't know. They've just had a really diverse background. They've met loads of different people from lots of different walks of life. And inherently, that is the life experience teaching you how to adapt and relate to and connect and talk to different adults. And that's hard to do. You can't just fix that in 2 weeks. Okay, I'm going to go on a quick holiday and meet as many different people as I can. I mean, that's your life experience contributing to your skills as a coach and your people skills. But maybe switching towards some more simple tactics. I think a lot of the language is similar with kids that we use with adults, and saying things like, "Oh, I can't do that." I'll often just, as soon as I hear an adult say, "Oh, I'm not sure, I'm not ready for that," or "I can't do that," or "I don't want to learn that," or "I'm not interested in that," I often just add the word "yet" on the end. "I can't do that yet. I'm not ready for that yet." Because that one little word is so powerful, and it just completely changes the tone and the direction of the conversation, and it immediately puts out the possibility that there is a progression out there. We just haven't done it yet. We haven't gone through it yet. So it switches them from that kind of negative state to that growth mindset, almost, with 3 little letters, YET, can't do that yet. And that's a really good example. I think the other one too for adults is trying to get them to believe in it, because you can say like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to ride that section of trail. But do they honestly believe it? So we often hear about like this positive self-talk. And positive self-talk, if it's not practiced, it doesn't really do anything in the short term. Like if you suddenly take me to a trail I've never ridden, and you take me to a sketchy section, like a steep, gnarly rock roll or something, I know I can do it, but me just standing at the top going, "I can do this," it doesn't always work. So sometimes I need to believe it more than I need to say it. And so saying something doesn't automatically result in believing something. And changing someone's belief usually is harder and usually takes time. And so understanding that, the short term, like if I am genuinely ready for something, maybe I've seen that rock roll, done some homework for a couple of weeks, I've thought about it, I've processed it, I've built up to it. That homework for the 2 weeks is changing the belief. And then in the moment when I'm there, I've believed in myself enough that I can do it. That's where the positive self-talk can really help. It can just help me stay in the right mindset, the right frame of mind. I can be positive. I can try and avoid the negative thoughts coming in. And that's where the positive self-talk can help. But without genuine belief, the positive self-talk is going to have a limited impact. So things like... can't do that yet, or I often say success comes in cans anytime they use the word can't. Just change it. I can do that. I can do it. And I'm worthy of it. I'm ready for it. But before I do it, I need to go through progression ABC. So yeah, there'd be some tips, I guess. What are some words or language points you've had success with, or maybe some that you try to avoid, or try and get them to avoid themselves? Like, what's been your experience?
Yeah, for me, been thinking a lot about the act of how we think about the action, right? And so how we're actually the words that we're choosing to articulate the sketchy section or whatever. And I've been trying to avoid any sort of like a obtuse word, like sketchy. Like to me, that's there's a negative. There's like, we all know what it means, but yet it's not helpful for me to think about it being sketchy. Yeah. Like let me break down this section into some objective details, and then in doing so, I can start thinking about those details in terms of things I know about my own performance, right? Yeah. Or if I'm working with, that's, for me personally, thinking about writing, me as a coach, when I hear someone talking about this section is too chunky, right? Or whatever. It's like, well, what do we have control over in this? what are some things? Yeah. It's very loose. It's steep. Let's describe these things.
Yeah.
And then let's think about what those things mean for us. And so how we think about these things has a huge impact on our performance. There's a lot of research out there that looks at this, with folks saying a large percentage of our performance is due to how we think about it. And I think working backwards for me is trying to get rid of the clutter and the fluff and the judgment, the either the positive or the negative judgments to the facts, and then how do we interpret those facts based on our skills? Yeah.
I love that word judgment. That's a key one. Like adults would judge themselves too much, whether positively or negatively. There's a lot of judgment. So taking the emotions out of it is key. And that's something I've found has helped me as a writer, but also as a coach. Is you mentioned earlier, like trying to be objective with your descriptions. And I apply that a lot to the visualizations. So changing that belief, like genuinely trying to believe you can do something, it requires daily positive self-talk. And that's where the positive self-talk, it helps in the long term. But that's a mental skill that you need to practice. Like for me, my habit is I overanalyze things, and a lot of adults do this, and they'll start to futurize failure, and they'll start to just look at all the ways it could possibly go wrong. And that's a habit that I've formed through my whole life. And it's a way to avoid disaster. It's actually your brain's way of preparing you. And it's actually a good thing because that it can actually keep you safe. But the problem is that process, that way of thinking overtakes everything else. And then it's hard for you to see success because you just keep seeing all the possible scenarios of failure and how many different ways you're going to crash down that section of trail. So visualizing it, I like what you said, labeling the things objectively, like there's a rock there, there's a loose section there, it's off camber there. What are the skills I need? Just need to stay centered, need to release the brakes there. Do I have those skills? Yes, I have those skills. And then just practicing that self-talk. So I've done the homework. I'm worthy of being there. I'm in the right place. And I'm ready for this. I've got this. There's a lot of value in just saying, not just like, I'm ready for this, but I'm going to smash this.
Right.
Yeah. Just changing those labels, like, oh, there's a jump or there's a technical climb and there's a section that I've just never cleaned. Yeah, how many times have you gone into that climbing section? It's like, oh, I'm going to give it a go. I'll see how I go this time. And like just changing it to, I'm ready for this. I've done the work. I've put in the skill development, the strength training. I've got the experience. I'm ready for it. I've done the work. I'm going to smash this. And seeing what changes and seeing if the outcome changes. Maybe the change isn't much. Maybe you don't smash it. But how did you feel going through it with that mindset? Did you feel like you were going to be more successful? Did you feel more confident regardless of the outcome or not? How did that mindset going into it help you? Like, I love this thing. I was just reading The Mind Gym, this book. I started reading it a while ago. And I always remember, I think it was last year I was reading it, where they got participants to visualize two sporting events or situations they were in, one where they were successful and then one where they failed. And then they were asked to contribute, what percentage of the difference in that performance was not due to their physical condition or skill level. So in other words, like, how much did the mental side, how you thought about it, your mental state, contribute to that successful performance versus the unsuccessful performance? And the reality is, for most athletes, they realized that between those two situations, they weren't physically stronger or weaker. They weren't more or less skilled. Like they had the same skill, the same experience, the same physical condition, but in one performance they succeeded and in one performance they failed. And you can relate to that in biking. Like think of a few examples where you nailed it and a few examples where you didn't nail it. And the challenge was maybe the same difficulty, but what made the difference? Were you more or less skilled? Were you stronger or weaker? No, probably not. It was almost certainly down to how did you feel mentally. So it highlights the importance of this mental side to coaching and things like this language and this positive self-talk. It's a key component to working on that mental component of an adult's journey through mountain biking.
That's awesome. Kind of one final point on language here and performance from a coaching perspective is knowing when not to coach.
Yeah.
And, working on jumps, we can use a lot of language, a lot of words. Sometimes it's like just positive affirmation, like if someone struggling with clearing, a jump that they really want to clear, they're not doing it. And instead of like wanting to jump in and fix, quote, fix something, maybe it's like the language is, hey, you'll get it. You're going to get it.
Yeah.
And being really, again, coming back to this whole full circle here, being really mindful of how we're using language, knowing when to switch gears and to, I'm just going to be your support person right now because I know this is hard. This is hard, but you'll get it. I know that you will.
Yeah, you're transitioning from being a technical skills instructor, the technical language, and you're transitioning to, I'm just going to be your coach, your support network. And the language with technical skills coaching and mental skills coaching, like night and day. And that's a common thing I see with both riders and coaches is they'll get stuck on the technical side. When they're trying to problem solve, they're thinking, I'm not strong enough or I'm lacking a skill. If you use that jumping example, like when do I press? When do I absorb? Like, is it my body position? What's my speed? They're trying to sort of make themselves feel better by thinking of the technical components, but they haven't realized that the skill at that point isn't the weakest link, right? The physical condition isn't the weakest link. The weakest link is the mind. And so your approach and your language needs to change to that. And I think that's a great point, Christian. Like so many coaches, I'll see them they just keep instructing, quote unquote,
right,
and instructing the skills, and they just need to switch that off. And you know what? Let's just guide them through this and be open with the student. Like, you've got the skill, so we're going to stop talking about that. Like, it's autonomous. Your body will know when to press the ramp and absorb the bike. Your body knows how to stay centered. So let's move on. What's holding us back here is the mental game. So what can I say? What can we say? What can you say to yourself to get this mental component in a place where you're ready to fly and feel confident and hit that jump consistently and comfortably? So one trigger kind of word I like to use to help me switch as a rider is how does my mind feel right now? And that question just puts me away from any of the sort of physical, technical components that I'm probably overanalyzing to the nth degree. And how does my mind feel right now? Do I feel confident? And if not, how can I get confident? Or do I feel motivated? If not, how can I get motivated? And if it's not me I'm talking to, if I'm coaching and I'm working with a rider, I might just ask the rider, how does your mind feel right now? Is your mind helping you succeed here, or is your mind not helping you succeed?
Yeah, and in doing so, then you're introducing some self-assessment, self-analysis, or I'm sorry, self-awareness here. Yeah. But then also, if I love that phrasing, is your mind helping you here? or is it limiting you here? And then we can open that door and like, well, what are the things that your mind's, are there negative talk here, or are there distractions? Things are just out of order today.
Yeah.
Things aren't settled or whatever, right? But then we have this doorway into some language we can use within that mental space.
Yeah, because you'll tell like real quickly, like, if someone replies like, well, I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, I'm just thinking about that, and yeah, I feel pretty good. Like straight away, you're like, okay, well, the mind isn't the component that's limiting them right now. Maybe it's something else. Alternatively, if they're like, well, yeah, geez, I'm not sure. I'm feeling a bit, definitely got some doubt. I'm analyzing things a lot. It's like, okay, right. Well, okay, we need to work here on the mind to calm it down, to get the mind in a place of confidence, a place of calmness. And then that helps me shift away from like I said, the technical skills and more towards the mental skills. But yeah.
Awesome. I want to bring us into this final topic here, and I'm going to call a bit of an audible here. I had some ideas to add to this and to simplify, but basically what I want to discuss is the beginner's mindset, growth mindset, and then a sustained mindset. Yeah. And we mentioned this in the last adult episode. That sounds a little weird.
They know what we mean.
Coaching adults.
It's like when you drive past, like in the city, every time you drive past an adult shop, the kids are like, what's an adult shop? It's boring. It's just full of tax and paperwork.
File cabinets.
Oh, I don't want to go in there. Yeah, you don't want to go in there. It's fine.
We've talked about each one of these things, but I had some observations just kind of as we've been on the mic here. We talked about beginner's mindset earlier, this approach that everything's new and seeing the world fresh, which is we can do this as an adult. Like there's things that we can do to make that happen for us. Kids do it naturally quite often. Growth mindset, we've talked about as this opportunity to view the progress as what's important as opposed to a specific outcome. Like we're moving forward, but we're really focusing our energy on the actual growth in the moment. Yeah. And finding enjoyment out of that. And then you mentioned in this last episode, this idea of I think you said good enough. Yeah. Like there are times when it's okay. And that's what I really wanted to explore. So maybe let's start with just to remind our listeners what you mean by this sustainer mindset.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about it a lot, like growth mindset and why it's important, especially for motivation and inspiration and that will feed into people's progression. But ultimately, a growth mindset isn't always sustainable. What happens to a plant if it grows too much? Like eventually it collapses. Like you've all seen sunflowers in a windstorm. Like, well, they're all snapped in half. Like, it's just not sustainable to always be growing and aiming for more. So, like everything, we should find a balance in life, and there's a lot of value in sustaining something after the fact. So we can't really have a sustained mindset when we need to learn something new or when we need to progress. But at some point along that pathway or that journey, the person will have accumulated enough skill, experience, if it's a sport, physical conditioning. At some point along that journey, there's a lot of value in understanding that, reflecting back and realizing how far you've come and what skills do you have now? What experience do you have now? What's your physical strengths now? And if it's at a level that you're happy with, especially as you get older, and if it's a high level, that gets harder and harder to sustain. And I've seen it in the winter and the summer, like with skiing, snowboarding, biking, professional coaches, athletes. Like I've seen a lot of ex-World Cup athletes, and I say it every year, like I have to train now just to not get worse.
Right.
Whereas in the past, I would have to train to get fitter. Whereas now, and if I put in the work, I got fitter, I got faster, I got stronger. Now I just have to train to not get weaker. So just purely from a physical standpoint, that sustained mindset gets important as you get older, especially. But then from a skill development mindset, if you're in your 40s and you're shredding and you can ride pretty much any trail that comes up to you, you can race or whatever it is, whatever level you've got to and you're happy with, as you get older, understanding the value in trying to maintain that and not let that slip is equally important as still trying to find that growth mindset. And in certain times in your life, certain periods in your life, it's going to chop and change. Like when I have less bandwidth, the kids are busy or work's busy or I don't have the motivation to ride much, whatever it is, shifting to a sustained mindset takes the pressure off. It really helps me be comfortable with where I'm at based on all the work I've put in over the years. And this can apply to you professionally as well as personally, like in your career, in your job, like be comfortable with what you've achieved and where you're at and trying to maintain that. It can be your new challenge. Like I always think of it like I'm a mountain bike coach. I'm 44. I'm probably going to be doing this for another 10 plus years, like trying to run level 4s when I'm 50 plus. Like, am I going to be fit enough, strong enough, good enough? I hope so. And what a cool challenge that is. I don't need to get better or faster when I'm 55. I don't need to be 10 years worth of faster and stronger than I am now.
Right.
But if I can be roughly the same level as to where I am now in 10 years, man, that would be amazing. I mean, that kind of excites me. So yeah, I think that sustained mindset is very important, but it's often overlooked. We just don't talk about it enough. And I think society doesn't always allow us that. We're kind of pressured to always grow and personal growth and finding this perfect harmony and all this kind of stuff that's just so out there and so visual in the world right now, and then we forget to appreciate just holding on to something is just as hard sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And some really concrete examples of that are all over YouTube mountain bike channels.
Yeah.
If you specifically just look at the thumbnails, it's the gnarliest, the best, the fastest. It's all the superlatives, and these messages are coming at us from that direction and all these other directions where there's either conscious or unconscious pressure to want to move forward. Then you layer into that the self-help and that culture that's flourishing right now. Then you can almost have a mania around wanting to get better.
Yeah.
Or feeling left behind, and being
that's a huge one. Like this feeling of not being left behind. I mean, social media, everything these days. I mean, everything is almost set up to make you feel like if you don't do something more, you'll get left behind, and it's just simply not true a lot of the time. Sometimes it is true, but a lot of the time it's not.
Well, yeah. If you stop paying attention to it, it goes away.
Yeah.
You can just enjoy doing what you do. Good.
Yeah. I mean, I laugh because a lot of the time I'm like, I can't wait to retire. I'm just going to get fat and drink pina coladas. And
I don't see that happening.
I kind of do. Like there's a certain part of me that's like, I've just been active all my life. I think I'm just going to quit one day. And it's like, I'm almost like interested to see what it's like. Like I want to see what it's like not being active and sporty. I'm intrigued. I'm curious. But and just letting it all go. And there's this sort of certain like relief behind that. Like it's tiring sometimes. And I think it's partly this. It's like I'm a little bit burnt out of this growth mindset. Like I almost want. I mean, I don't want to go towards like a lose it mindset. That would probably be the other end of the spectrum, right? Like a growth, a sustain, and then a lose it. So you don't want the needles to swing that far. But
well, how much of this? Because it sounds like what you're talking a little bit about is burnout, and it's something that we face as adults in coaching. You can get burned out coaching. How much of this is that it's October in the mountain bike season now, and you're in Australia coaching this in the winter. Like you've been coaching straight through since almost this time last year, right?
Yeah, and then I did a ton of work in the winter with the new reference guide stuff for PMBI. But I mean, I've seen it. I mean, personally, right now for coaching, I'm not burnt out. I've got a little less motivation to ride at the moment, for sure. I often go through like a bit of a patch in the fall where I'm just quite content not to ride and not to eat the best and not to stay the fittest. Like that's usually a pattern I have every year, and I'm quite comfortable with that because I know me, and I know that after a certain amount of time, I hate it and I want to feel good and get in shape, and like it never lasts that long for me. But I do like that variety of like that growth mindset, get fit, get strong, work, and then swapping it back to like, just maybe let's let it go a little bit. And then it's that sort of ebb and flow. But I do see coaches burning out now, and that's an interesting thing for us in the mountain bike industry is for the first time, at least in my little bubble around Whistler, is we're starting to see coaches that have been doing it for 10, 15 years. They've achieved a lot of their goals, like maybe they're level 3 or level 4 instructor, and they've achieved a lot in their coaching industry, and they've stopped improving. They're not getting any better at coaching or teaching. That's usually the first sign of a little bit of a burnout, is the inspiration, the motivation is gone, and so they've stopped improving. Because they've stopped improving, their things have got stale, and they're letting some bad habits and things creep in, and they're not realizing it. They start to blame students a lot. You'll see that, where the student this, the student that, and you can never blame the student, because it's the coach's role to problem solve and adapt with whatever student you have. So I think that's interesting, and I'd be interested to see where the industry goes in the future. Like more and more, we're seeing mountain bike coaches now that are in their 40s towards their 50s. We've seen that in the ski industry a long time now, but it's the first time we're starting to see it in the mountain bike side. So I think just understanding these different mindsets, growth mindset or sustain mindset, and switching between the two, being comfortable with two. I mean, these are all tactics and tools that a rider and a coach can employ to be happy with themselves and to keep finding motivation as and when they want it.
Yeah, totally. One of the things, this might come as a surprise to folks, but one of the things I genuinely look forward to every year, I mountain bike a lot, and I love to ride. But I love closing down our bike park, and I love it. It's one of my favorite days when we hang the chain and we say the trails are closed. We're done for the year. I absolutely love our bike park. It's a very special place, but man, that day, first day it snows, it's like, all right, we're done.
Yeah.
There's this weight that comes off, and done coaching, done doing it. It's usually it's cold and snowy here, so we get to explore the world that way. But that's something that like I look forward to, and it motivates me to then the next year. Like I see it as like as a season, seasonality.
Totally.
I can recharge and be away from it. On a good year, we've only had a couple of these recently. I can put the bike up, for 3 months and just ski.
Yeah, fully. Yeah.
And not teach skiing.
Yeah.
Not coach, not do anything. It's like, I'm just going to ski.
Yeah, totally. And I've gone that way in recent years, where I've taught snowboarding less and less, because it's just, I'm so involved with teaching or training instructors year round that when I get on snow now, I just want to snowboard. Like I had my first snowboard dream last night. They always pop in this time of year where I start dreaming about snowboarding. One of those ones where you do like a really easy trick. Last night I just dreamt this like beautiful 720, and it was so easy, and I was like, man, that was such a good feeling. And I woke up like so jazzed to go snowboarding.
That's awesome.
Not that I've ever done a 720, but yeah, and I think that variety is key. And again, like going back to adults and adult mountain bikers and learning, it's like we said earlier, being kind to yourself. Like this, definitely around here, I see a lot of pressure, and in Australia especially in locations where you can ride year round. Australia is a good example. Like there's a lot of like some of the top coaches and riders I know in Australia, they can ride year round, but there's definitely a month, 2 months where they just don't ride. It's a little bit colder, and they use it as like the first excuse. I mean, it's funny coming from the UK, they're like, oh, it's a bit cold, I don't really ride. And it's like, it's 14 degrees. Like it's perfectly fine to ride. It's actually quite nice to ride. They're like, oh yeah, it's a bit chilly. But yeah, I think finding those times to put down the bike and pick up another sport, get that variety is massively valuable.
Awesome. Well, Paul, this has been fun again.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Really enjoyed this conversation.
I hope, I hope the listeners enjoy it and let us know. Like the more comments we have, in our Instagram feed, and the more we can interact with our listeners, and
yeah, I guess maybe a good place to plug here that we're back into a regular routine for a while.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
keeping some episodes going, not burn out on this, just getting started.
Yeah, it's good times. It's fun.
Donuts.
Oh yeah, donuts. Do you have a donut for the day?
I do, and I think donuts tie in here. Donuts make us happy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good mental coaching.
Good mental coaching. Yeah. I had this. We have a couple donut shops nearby, but I was in the grocery store. Grocery stores here typically have a bakery, and I'll go by and I'll smell the donuts, and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to pass. But there's a brand of packaged donuts here in the Southeast called Tasty Cakes, and they make little mini donuts, and they're usually like powdered sugar donuts. Yeah. And I was doing our weekly shopping, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a Tasty Cake package, but it has yellow on it. I'm like, what is that? Powdered sugared lemon donuts.
Oh wow!
And it's
just sounds good.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm not like a huge lemon fan, but man, it was so tasty. Tasty Cakes.
Oh, that sounds really good.
And there's little ones, so it's like you can feel good about sustaining. Right? Yeah, sustaining. Looking forward to the next 10 years. Don't eat the whole bag.
A sustained mindset with donut eating. I think we might have to move to because I've found some really good donuts recently online. But like
online?
No, I mean locations.
Oh, okay.
Like donut, because I follow some donut shops, and then other donut shops like pop up in your feed, right?
Right.
Like I found this one in Australia, and I won't give it away today, but we're going to try and go there in October when I'm visiting Shan's family. But yeah, it looks insane, and I can't wait to tell the listeners about it because it blew my mind. So. Yeah, so we might have to shift to like donuts that we haven't personally eaten, but we have been told about or have found about.
That's awesome.
I don't know what you think to that.
I love it. It's a little like a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
For good donuts.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Cheers, dude.
Cheers. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show and that it sparked some ideas for your writing and your coaching. As always, our approach to coaching is on pros and cons, not rights and wrongs. And with that in mind, our podcast is meant to be more of a conversation about topics and techniques rather than a final say in how to ride or how to teach. As always, please take care if using or applying any of the techniques discussed in this podcast. Stay safe, ride smart, and we'll see you next time.